Let's raise the big questions. Airlines, airports, have they been caught napping by the fog? Why is there no plan in advance for the fog? Who has let down the flyers of the country? The airlines, the aviation authorities? Those are the questions we'll raise. I'm joined by Lloyd Matthias, senior business executive. He's a passenger whose flight was delayed yesterday by almost 12 hours from Bengaluru. Captain A.D. Manik, former aviation instructor, Air India Employees Guild Training Institute, joins me. Jitendra Bhargava, former executive director at Air India, and Kapil Kaul, CEO and director of Kappa India, which looks at aviation for years. I want to come to you, Lloyd, first, because you were actually a passenger on a flight on Sunday. Tell us what happened. How was your flight delayed by almost 9 to 12 hours? What happened when you finally landed on the runway? You've got to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Thank you, Rajdeep. I think yesterday was unusual, but really, really badly handled by the airline. In short, I was at a 7:30 p.m. flight from Bangalore to Delhi, as one would expect to leave home at about 5 o'clock. The flight got pushed back sequentially, first from 7:30 to 9:30, eventually took off at 1 a.m., at 1 in the morning, and that's fine. And then the 2.5-hour flight got stretched to 3.5, because at about 3:30, the pilot said there was air traffic congestion over Delhi because a lot of flights were holding. So we eventually touched down at 4:30 in the morning. Now that's where it didn't end. At that point in time, because of poor visibility, they couldn't get a tow vehicle to lead the aircraft to an aero bridge. That took an hour and a half. We eventually made it to the aero bridge at 6 in the morning.
No, hold on. You're saying your flight lands in Delhi at 4 a.m., but you're waiting at the runway to get a parking bay, and you eventually park at 6 a.m., 2 hours later.
Absolutely. It's IC 509. It lands at 4:15 a.m. It eventually gets to a parking bay at 5:45, closer to 6 a.m. And then the baggage takes another hour. So the baggage comes out closer to 6:45. So you get home at 7:30 in the morning. Right? That's how bad it is. And I think my issue is...
Yeah, go ahead.
And I think my issue is two parts. I think one is the really tardy communication. I think at no point did the pilot say anything about that hour's wait in Delhi airport on the tarmac in an aircraft. Absolutely no communication from the flight crew or from the cockpit crew. I think that was making everyone really uncomfortable and very restless within the flight.
Once you were in the flight, how long did it take before you finally took off? Because one of the big concerns that passengers had, I know that former Comptroller and Auditor General of Vinod Rai had rung me up yesterday saying he was sitting in the plane for 2 hours. I was traveling to Lucknow and eventually went back home because the flight was delayed beyond 6 hours. But I want to understand from you, was there no communication, or when you were in the flight, did you have to wait at inside the flight for an hour or so?
Mercifully not, Rajdeep. At the takeoff point, we just waited for an hour in the aircraft. It was a little unduly long, but not unusually. I mean, 1 hour was manageable. I think it's when we landed in Delhi and that hour and a half wait to actually get to an aero bridge, I think that was excruciating and really painful.
You know, Jitendra Bhargava, you're hearing from Lloyd Matthias, who himself is a senior marketing executive, has worked at the top of several companies. What's the sense? Is it that airline companies are to blame for this? Is it the Airports Authority of India, the Delhi International Airport, or any private airport operator? Who is to blame particularly for the lack of communication? You can't, the fog is something out of their control, but communication in real time, which the DGCA is now calling for, is the very least that passengers will accept.
Rajdeep, his experience yesterday is not an isolated case. Because of the fog, many flights originating from Delhi got delayed and had a cascading effect on flights originating from other cities in the country. Passengers do get affected, no doubt. Airlines also get affected, is also a reality. What happens is that airline staffing structure
your video is
for
gone.
a
Can you get
certain
your
number of passengers to be handled.
Yeah, we're
now,
getting
what
your
you
video
have
back.
when the flight gets delayed and multiple flights get delayed, you have a large number of passengers on hand at the airport. Can you cope with that?
I'm going to come to you in a moment. Your video has gone off, so we'll come to you in a moment. But Kapil Kaul, you want to, tell us where the problem lies? Where does the buck stop here?
Hi, Rajdeep. Good evening.
Good evening.
First of all, I think the unruly passenger behavior is a systemic issue. It needs an institutional response. And there could be many triggers, and we shouldn't look at it in isolation. It needs an institutional response.
It's unacceptable. Let's be clear. Whether you're delayed by 3 or 4 hours, you cannot assault a pilot. That's unacceptable.
I'm coming to that. I'm saying the normal air rage or the unruly passenger behavior needs an institutional response.
Right.
The case that happened on yesterday on Indigo's pilot being assaulted is unprecedented, and I think the strictest punishment should happen to the concerned passenger. But generally speaking, we need to tackle unruly behavior, air rage in a more institutional manner, and the triggers for this, which are the December period, Rajdeep, the December period in January, which is congested, the traffic is at peak, there is fog, there are other multiple factors that result in the kind of experience that passenger has. That is a different issue, and we can take this separately. But my view is that the passenger unruly behavior needs an institutional response.
No, that I take. But where does the accountability stop for the lack of communication? The fact that there is no real-time communication, an airline like Indigo, which has a monopoly, which is almost a monopoly at times, seems to, is being accused now of not giving enough information to passengers to take them for granted.
So, Rajdeep, that's correct. During the December and January, much that you would like to get your information system much more robust and stronger so the passengers have that well ahead of time, you will always have a problem. If you factually look at what happens in December peak month, right for a month during, let's say, mid-December to mid-January or third week of January, is unprecedented. I'm not saying that you can't have a better information sharing system. I am not saying that you can't have a better, transparent and a more transparent information system, but it's going to happen. You can't avoid it. The congestion is a reality.
Okay.
What you can do is you can minimize it as much as possible, and I'm glad that the minister has taken a very proactive, as he usually does, very proactive measures, and SOPs are being